Force over here, and welcome back to another reading live stream. Today, I have to remove my camera because I noticed it's messed up here. Today, I am finishing by way of a poll that I made earlier today. I asked, which would you guys want to see? The me finishing the rest of this book, or days 19 through 27 for this book. As you can tell from the title, this book won. Originally, they both were tied at one apiece, but a third vote gave Spy Kids the win, so that is what I'm doing. I'll be reading days 19 through 27 of that one at a later point, but let's go ahead and do this book. Let's go ahead and read this book. If I can find part, there it is, right there. So without further ado, let's begin. When we last, to recap, we last left the Spy Kids. They were captured by some some giant-sized porcelain dolls. And so now, that's basically where we ended things off. Let's see how they do this from the second half. So without further ado, let's begin now. Chapter 9. Hey, easy! Judy protested as the Dutch doll tossed him like, a rag doll onto the floor of a huge, high-ceilinged atrium in the center of the mall. A moment later, Carmen's doll dumped her in as well. She collided with Judy and they both tumbled to the floor. Black bars suddenly rose out of the floor, surrounded the Spy Kids on all sides. They were now in a cage that reached all the way to the towering atrium ceiling. Some of the bars were 6 inches wide, others were a foot thick. Still, others were only an inch across. How completely random, Judy said. He jumped to his feet and spun around to assess the uneven bars. On the other side of the bars, the collector's dolls began to quickly hop away, leaving Carmen and Judy alone in their cage. You won't get away with this, Judy called after the dolls. He ran up to the bars and grabbed a hold of them. Zzz. Ow! Judy shouted, leaping backward. Angry red welts rose up on his palms. Of course! The bars are virtual and electrified. What next? Carmen replied. Her mouth was still gagged with the doll's satiny green ribbon. I can't understand you, Judy scowled. Carmen screeched. Okay, Judy said, scrambling over to Carmen. But if I ungag you, you have to promise not to yell at me anymore. Carmen said. That sounded awfully like whatever to me, but I'll untie you anyway, Judy said. He crouched behind his sister and nimbly unknotted the ropes around her hands. Groaning with relief, Carmen untied her own gag. Massaging her jaw, she got to her feet and stared at the bars. Hey, she said suddenly, pointing to the base of the bars. There are numbers at the bottom of this cage. Then she slapped her forehead. I know what this is, she cried. Instead of bars, our prison is made of barcodes. You know those stripy symbols on every consumer product? Now do you believe me when I say that shopping stinks? Judy said with the exasperated sigh. Then he pressed a button on his spy watch. Let's check in with Mom and Dad, he said. Hopefully they found a seam and can come rescue. Before Judy had a chance to finish her sentence, much less call their parents on a spy watch, a cheerful-looking couple stepped out from behind a "You Are Here" kiosk and walked up to the bars. The woman wore a cardigan sweater and a navy blue headband in her shiny blonde hair. The man wore a red tie and a twinkly smile. "Hi there, little fella," the man said. "They must be shoppers," Carmen whispered to Judy, "although they don't seem very traumatized to be trapped in the virtual mall." "I don't care who they are as long as they help us," Judy whispered. "They look friendly enough. Maybe they'll help us break free of this virtual chicken coop." Then he turned to the couple. "Hi there yourself," Judy said jovially. "Perhaps you can give us a hand." "You betcha," the blonde woman chipped in with a twangy North Dakota accent. "I'm Candy, and this here is Andy. We'd be happy to help you out. But first, can we ask y'all a few questions?" Candy and Andy each pulled a clipboard from behind their backs. Attached to each clipboard with a silvery chain was pencil. Let's start with your name, age, and approximately what time of day you were born," Cindy began. "And then we'll move on to the dates upon which you lost each of your baby teeth," Andy said, licking the lead of his pencil, "followed by family pet history." Carmen's horror mounted as she saw how many pages were wedged onto the clipboards. "Survey takers," she hissed to Judy. "Jake told me about them. They hypnotize you and you're stuck answering their silly consumer questions for an eternity." "That's terrible," Judy said, blinking sadly at Carmen. "But could you hold that thought?" Then he turned to the chirpy Candy. "Now let's see," he said. "I lost my upper right bicuspid in the spring of my 6th year. I can still remember what the tooth fairy bought me. A yo-yo and $1. "Uh-huh," Candy said eagerly. "And tell me, Carmen, what kind of shampoo do you use?" "I refuse to answer your inane questions," Carmen said, sticking out her chin. "But if you must know, I use Peach Melba shampoo for curly hair, and then I sometimes finish with a nice strawberry cream rinse." Judy's mouth was dry. "Hey, Daniel Barry, how you doing tonight?" Judy's mouth was dry. His eyelids were heavy. His head was pounding. He didn't know how long he and Carmen had been here, sprawled on the floor of the Bartow jail, answering the survey takers' questions. But it seemed like a long, long time. "Uh-huh, super," the apple-cheeked Dandy was saying. He flipped over yet another page on his clipboard. "And when you brush your teeth, would you say you make an up and down motions or side to side?" Judy groaned, trying to picture himself in his bathroom at home, brushing his teeth. Ah, home. But there were no price tags. No "You Are Here" kiosks. No indoor fountains and soaring glass-topped atria. Judy's eyelids were even heavier now. They were just about to fall shut when something glimmered. Something glimmered in his eye. He perked up a bit. What was that? The sparkle happened again. Something was flashing from the glass people mover, which was halted on its monorail far above the atrium. Judy glanced at Carmen to see if she could see it, but she was immersed in telling the survey takers about the way she tied her shoes. Judy blinked rapidly and stared up at the flashes again. When his eyes came into focus, he realized he was gazing up at Red, Jake, and Mickey. They were peering down into the Carmen and Judy's jail cell from the people mover's window. Red was bobbling one of her ruby rhinestone berettas. It reflected the sunshine streaming through the atrium's glass ceiling. Those were the flashes that had caught Judy's eye. In fact, the flashes seemed to have a rhythm. Suddenly, Judy gasped. The sparkle did have a rhythm, and a rhyme and a reason. They were Morse code. Quickly, Judy translated Red's flashes into 2 words. UPC number. Huh? Confused, Judy nudged Carmen in her survey-taking days. She ignored him. Judy nudged her harder. Finally, he elbowed her in the ribs. Ow! Carmen blurted, glaring over at her brother. He looked at her pointedly and then glanced up at the people mover. She followed his gaze and gasped when she saw Jake, Mickey, and Red flashing her Berettas. While Judy took over the survey answers, Carmen deciphered the Morse code. The moment she got to the R and UPC number, she gasped in recognition. Of course, she thought. Why didn't I think of that? To read up an item on a cash register, you either scan in its barcode or type in the UPC number at the bottom of the bars. It's like a barcode side tracker, or safe cracker. Carmen looked hungrily at the numbers lining the bottom of the giant barcode before her. Then she shook the last bit of survey-induced bleariness from her head and began surreptitiously typing into her spy watch. Golly good answer, Judy, Andy was saying. Now let's talk about potatoes. Do you prefer them baked, mashed, fried, scalloped? Carmen looked at the tiny antenna of her spy watch's wireless modem. Then she began feverishly, if quietly, hacking into the national UPC network. A few deft keystrokes later, and she was in. Hoping she had gotten everything correct, she braced her feet and typed in the giant barcode's UPC number. Boom! The uneven stripes of the barcode whooshed back into the floor. Carmen and Judy stood still for a moment as they looked at where the bars had been. Then they grinned. The Spy Kids were free. Judy! Carmen cried. Run! Hey, GC, how you doing? Answering the how do you like your potatoes question, huh? Okay. Alright. That was actually part of the book. Because they were involved with some survey takers, and we all know how much those people are like. Alright. Chapter 10. Now that the barcodes had disappeared, Carmen and Judy just had to deal with Candy and Andy. The survey takers were looking far less cheery now that their captive audience was not so captive. You can't leave now, Candy growled. If you don't complete the survey, the whole thing is null and void. Void this, Carmen yelled. She grabbed Candy's clipboard and thwacked the survey taker over the head with it. While Candy staggered away, Carmen darted across the atrium. Meanwhile, Judy took Andy's clipboard and yanked the pencil free. He looped its silver chain around Andy's waist and knotted it tight. Then he dashed after Carmen. When he caught up to her, Carmen was just emerging from a nearby toy store with 2 extra-large pogo sticks. She tossed one to Judy. I just tried one of these and bumped up my head on the ceiling, Carmen told him. I think the virtual environment supersized them. Just what we need, Judy crowed. The Spy Kids climbed onto the pogo sticks and positioned themselves beneath the glass people mover. They both jumped at the same time. One mighty bounce sent them soaringly high into the air. Okay, Judy said. With his face smashed up against the glass of the people mover, it was a little hard to talk. I guess we miscalculated the distance a bit. Carmen unstuck her own face from the glow from the glass and shook her head woozily. Like Judy, she was clinging to the people mover's door with her fingertips. Hey, at least we made it up here, she sighed. Jay poked his head through the window and gave the Spy Kids a smile. Another awesome splat from the Spy Kids, he said. Have you guys ever thought about going into video game design? Hardy har, Judy said dryly. Now is not the time. Want to give us a hand? Within a few minutes, Carmen had hacked into the People Mover's computer-driven engine and steered the cart down the monorail to the Amazonian-themed restaurant. Red pointed to a faint blue glow between the fake alligator pool and the fake volcano. See, she said with satisfaction. Just like I told you. Blue light special. Well, Carmen said, when in the jungle. She reached into her shopping bag and pulled out 5 green ropes with silver rings on their ends. She handed them out. They're not exactly vines, she grinned, but they'll get us down. The kids clamped the ropes onto the people mover's exterior and rappelled down into the depths of the fake jungle. They landed right in front of a large metal cube. It was fronted by a small door that was full of large bolts and locks. The door was humming and polishing with so much energy it was giving off a blue glow. A glow so bright that Red had seen it from across the mall. This has gotta be it! On the other side of that door we'll find the computer hub and, I'm sure, our mystery villain, Carmen cried. We have to let our parents know before we storm in. Who knows what sort of defense this madman has waiting for us? We might need backup. Nodding in agreement, Judy pressed the walkie-talkie button on his spy watch. Mom, Dad, he said proudly. We've located the company hub. Repeat, we're at the hub. What's your location? Over. Then Judy cocked his head and waited for his parents' response. Sorry, Spy Kids. Your mom and dad are indisposed, said an oily, smooth voice. And as for their whereabouts, only I know. Webster? Judy questioned into his spy watch. Is that you? Indeed do, Webster said. And have I got a surprise for you? It's just around that faint boulder about 10 feet to your left. Carmen and Judy glanced to their left. There was a boulder just where the Webster had said it would be. The siblings glanced at each other in surprise. They knew at once that Webster was watching them. He must have us on a surveillance camera, Carmen whispered to her brother. After all, he is the head of security. With a shrug, the spy kids headed toward the boulder. You better stay here while we check this out, Carmen told the mall rats over her shoulder. Stay behind that shrub. If you know they got a spy... I mean, to be fair, when you know you're on camera, you might as well just say where you're at, because even if you were to say stay over there, the camera might find where they're at, even if they didn't say anything. When they rounded the big foam rock, the spy kids saw a big bank of computer monitors mounted into the fake volcano's wall. Each screen was identically filled with pulsing stars and a window that flashed, "Click here!" Click. Judy looked around wildly. "Click with what?" he blurted. Whizzz. As if in response to his question, a panel suddenly opened beneath one of the screens, and a mouse and a mousepad whooshed out of the wall. Judy grabbed the mouse and double-clicked on the window. Suddenly, the computer screen sprang up to life. The spy kids found themselves blinking at a pulsating, cartoony soundstage, festooned with lamps, jewelry, toys, clothes, dolls, and other merchandise. Big yellow price tags were attached to each item. And dancing in front of those wares was Webster. But just like the toys and jewelry, this glubby security guard was shiny and new. His frizzy brown hair curls had been replaced by a shellacked blonde hairstyle. His paunch was flattened, and his shoulders were broadened. His chin was strong and clefted, and his teeth were sparkling white. "A new wallet for your dough, a new car in which to go," Webster said, thrusting his grinning face into the camera. "Computers in the know, mowers in which to mow. Buy them all for prices low on WhopperShopper.com." Judy gasped. "Webster Pickman, of course," he sputtered. "How could I have missed that? He's WebDCPickman.com is his middle name. He's the mastermind behind WhopperShopper.com. I knew he looked familiar. WhopperShopper.com, Carmen blurted. Is that the website with those ridiculous skater outfits? Yeah, Judy said morosely. Not to mention the video games and toys and cubic zirconia rings. And let me guess, Carmen said softly, her heart sinking. Tacky collector's dolls? You got it, kiddos, Webster said, flashing another sparkly grin at the camera. He leaned in closer to the screen. And that's not all! If you buy now, I will throw in my blue light special for a very special one-time only price. You can get yourselves not one but two meddling parents. Suddenly, the camera swung away from Webb. It skimmed over to a gigantic mainframe computer loaded with bells and whistles. The bells were ringing. The whistles were whistling. And the camera kept moving. Finally, it came to rest on Mom and Dad. They were bound, gagged, and gazing at the camera in absolute terror. Currently midnight, my time. Alright. Okie doke. Chapter 11. I can't believe it, Carmen sputtered to the computer screens. The camera had swung away from the captive Cortezes and refocused on Webster. You're the villain? What, you're surprised? Webster said, carefully smoothing his hand over his shiny helmet of coiled hair. Some spies? That I thought you would have surmised. Cut the bad Dr. Seuss routine and tell us what you're after, Pickman, Judy raged. It's simple. Dollars and cents, Webb said, rubbing his new manicured fingertips together. Without the mall of the universe to feed shoppers' greed, where are they left to turn? WhopperShopper.com! They've already started buying. And I couldn't help let you silly spies muck up my profit margin by reopening this mall, could I? Judy glared. You'll never get away with it, Webb said, rolling his eyes. Who's spouting cliches now, kiddies? I've got your parents locked away tight. Mess with my computer, and they'll feel my might. You said we could have our parents back for a price, Judy said to Webb. What sort of price are you talking about? Please, I don't need your cash, Webb said, examining his sparkly teeth in a tacky false silver light hand mirror. All I want is for you to dash. Leave the mall of the universe be, and I'll let your parents go free. Judy didn't want this villain to see him sweat or panic, so he continued to glare at the computers, his chin thrust out defiantly, but out of the camera's range he surreptitiously reached for his spy watch. He quickly typed in an instant message to Carmen. What do we do? He typed without looking at his watch. This guy's rotten driving has given me a headache. What's more, if we try to dismantle the computer program, he's going to do something horrible to Mom and Dad. Judy hit send. Carmen's spar watch buzzed, and she glanced down and read Judy's IM. Another moment later, Judy received her reply. Not if I can help it, she had written. Keep him talking. Judy turned back to the computer. Keep him talking, he said to himself. What can I possibly have to talk about with a greedy arch-villain who's kidnapped my parents? The only thing that leaped to his mind were angry insults, so Judy shrugged and let them fly. Listen, Webb, he sneered. I don't know why you're even bothering. Your skater clothes are completely uncool. And Kieran Zirconia and Collector's Dolls? Please. Those things are tackier than wet paint. People are going to get sick of WhopperShopper.com and move on to something else faster than you can say, download. Webb's blue eyes narrowed and his jutting jaw clenched. It had worked. Jody had honed in on Webb's worst fear. That's what you think, Webb hissed at the Spy Kid. Sure, my goods are pure junk. I know that. But that doesn't matter. My genius is in the sales technique. Nobody but nobody can resist the pitch of Webb DC Pikmin. With that, Webb snapped his fingers. A surge of cheesy elevator music poured out of the computer monitors. A pretty woman in a blue sateen dress danced in the camera's range and twirled around in a circle. She smiled directly into the camera. She was wearing a pair of glittery blue earrings beneath her super sprayed blonde hairdo. Allow my lovely assistant to show you our genuine 3-carat, almost not artificial sapphire earrings, Webb began, as the woman continued to mug for the camera. Nothing sets blue eyes afire like the spark of sapphire. You'll be so sure that they were real, this press will seem like a steal. As Webb thrust a matching glittery bracelet and necklace at the camera and prattled down on about low prices, Carmen furtively dialed Jake's cell phone number into her spy watch. Then she sent him an instant message. In fact, she sent him a series of them. In the first, she told him all about their .com bad guy. Then she began sending explicit instructions for breaking into the computer hub door. Instantly, there was a message from Jake. No prob, he wrote. I've got Red listening to the door for clicks while I spin the combination lock. And Mickey's working the little bolts, because his fingers are so small. Just keep the instructions coming, and we'll break into this computer hub faster than you can say, going on a business super software sale. Carmen kept typing, and Pikmin kept pitching, and Judy kept egging him on. But how do you get your non-stick pans so non-sticky? He asked Webb challengingly. My boy, let me tell you, Webb gushed. He patted his slick hair before continuing on. Our patented pan is a peerless performer. It's the most protective coating of powdered pewter that makes the magic happen. As the supervillain worked himself into a super-selling tizzy, Carmen got a final eye in from Jake. Dude, we're totally in, the message read. Carmen nudged Judy with her elbow. Slowly and silently, the Spy Kid sneaked away from the bank of computer monitors. As they slipped back around the boulder on their way to the computer hub, Carmen peeked over her shoulder. Just as she'd hoped, Pikmin was so wrapped up in his sleazy sales pitch, he hadn't even noticed that his audience was MIA. Carmen and Judy hurried over to the mall rats. Red and Mickey were doing a triumphant dance of joy outside the computer hub door, which was standing ajar. Jake, ever the cool one, merely leaned against a fake tree, his ankles crossed casually, but a gleeful grin was plastered on his face. He caught Carmen's eye and winked. As Carmen and Judy ran up to the mall rats, Red quit dancing. They all knew that it was time to get down to business. Carmen pointed at the hub's thick steel door and curled her lip. Inside that room is Webb DC Pikmin, a villain who spits on everything we stand for, she seethed. Like peaceful shopping and food court hanging, the whole magical microcosm that we know and love as the mall. Yeah, Mickey said, pumping one of his little fists in the air. I want to see this baddie go down! Bring back our mall! Jake set his jaw and agreed. Jaw? Let's get in there and slap the cuffs on that sleazy dude. Jake was so spy material, and it was a lucky thing. To rescue two spy parents, dismantle the virtual reality program cloaking them all, and arrest Webb. Carmen and Judy were definitely going to need some backup. Okay, she whispered to the mall rats. Stay close to me and Judy. And if anything gets hairy, remember the golden rule of spying. What's that? What's that? Mickey breathed. When in doubt, Judy informed him sagely, fake it. And when faking fails, duck. Wise words, dude, Jake said. Let's go. The 5 kids lined up. Then Carmen gritted her teeth and kicked the unlocked computer hub door wide open. She and Judy jumped through the door first, their dukes raised and their voices sharp. Freeze, Webb! Judy barked. The jig is up, Carmen added. But when the kids paused to scope out the computer hub, their voices evaporated into surprised squeaks. Then gasps of shock. What do you think they found in there? I hope you thought about it for a little bit because we're about to find out what they found. Chapter 12. The Spy Kids gaped at what they saw, because what they saw was precisely nothing. They were standing in a completely empty gunmetal gray room. Where was the humming mainframe? Where was the garish display of tacky goods? Webb Pitchman was nowhere to be seen, and the Cortez parents were AWOL too. The room was as blank as a dead computer screen. In fact, the very room in which the kids were standing seemed to be fading away. First the walls became wavy and watery. Then they slowly became transparent. Finally, with a burst of static and a flurry of shimmery dots, the walls evaporated entirely. The dumbfounded crew of the kids found themselves standing in the fake Amazonian jungle. Judy's face fell. This was just an illusion, he said. Another part of Webb's evil virtual environment. Suddenly, Webb Pitchman's silky smooth voice erupted from the loudspeakers planted all over the mall. How'd you like that Blue Light Special, kiddos? He boomed with a sinister cackle. A real deal, eh? Hey, bad guy, nice ruse, Mickey said in the air. But come find us in person and we'll see who's got the fuse. Leave the rhyming to the experts, kid, Webb said through the speakers. Why don't you come face us in person? Judy demanded. Or are you scared of us spies? Pshaw, Webb bellowed. Meet me in the food court in 10. We're there, Carmen said. With that, the Spy Kids ran out of the themed restaurant with their buds in tow. They began dashing through the mall. Hurry, Carmen huffed as they ran past the indoor horse racing track and dodged the mist of the MOTU waterfalls. The food court is about a mile away. If we run, we'll just make it. The kids shot past the Fox Florida alligator farm and the giant cotton candy machine. But when they approached the video arcade, Red called out, Wait! There's a back door in this arcade. We can take a shortcut through it. I've done it dozens of times. It'll cut our trip in half. We need every minute we can get, Carmen said. I want to be Webb to the food court. Maybe we'll have time to set a trap for him. Lead the way, Red. Man, Red said, grinning through a new wad of cherry gum. Spying's almost as fun as shopping. Come on. The kids ran into the arcade, and then the kids ground to a halt. They'd expected a familiar game room, black rubber floors, crowded, flashing video games, and a dusky, dimly lit atmosphere. I keep forgetting, Jade said in an awestruck voice. We're not in our good old MOTU anymore. This joint's been virtualized. In spades. The floors had transformed into a hubbly, floaty substance that felt like a cross between water and jello. The video games had become huge, three-dimensional, and predatory. Whoa! Judy yelled, jumping out of the way just as a medieval sword whistled out of one game. That was a close one. Ah! Judy cried. This time a fat race car tire had whooshed out of another video game, nearly flattening Judy before whizzing back into the game. Okay, Fred said nervously. The shortcut was obviously not the best idea, but the alternative door is just through this back room. Should we make a run for it? Ah! Judy cried, ducking to dodge a leaping animated frog. But then she nodded. We've come this far, and there's motivation for running. There's a bunch of retro Miss Pac-Mans heading straight for us. The kids began to race through the arcade to a small army of big-mouthed yellow dots skimmed after them, chomping hungrily at their heels. They'd almost made it to the door when Mickey tripped. The other kids heard him fall to the floor with a grunt. When they spun around, they saw Mickey cowering under the hot breath of a virtual dragon. It must have popped out of a nearby video game the moment Mickey hit the dirt. Mickey! Carmen yelled. She started to run toward the little boy, but Jake grabbed her by the shoulders. You don't have time to hang around here, he told her. You and Judy have got to get to the food court. But we can't leave when Mickey's in trouble, Carmen gasped. She was reaching for her utility belt, trying to size up the best gadget for fighting dragons. Believe me, Carmen, Jade said. That dragon is the star of King Arthur's score. It's my favorite video game. I've held the high score for the past 2 years. I can totally take him. To prove it, Jake leaped over to the dragon. As he went, he scooped up an armful of virtual rocks that were piled onto the arcade floor. He began winging the rocks at the beast with expert aim. This gave Mickey a chance to scurry out of the creature's reach. But Jake kept fighting. Every time the irritated dragon spewed a breath of fire, he calmly and nimbly jumped out of the way. When the dragon lunged at him, he hit it with a virtual rock. Meanwhile, Red and Mickey hovered safely by the arcade's back door. Go on, Jake said to the Spy Kids over his shoulder. I've got this covered. The dragon's only playing at level 2, for Pete's sake. I'll have him slain in 5 minutes. Then we'll come find you. Are you sure? Carmen cried. Yes, Jake said, easily sidestepping the dragon's barbed tail as it took a swing at him. Good luck with Webb! Carmen flashed Jake a thank you smile. Then she and Judy darted through the back door and looked around. Red was right. The food court was only a few yards away. Carmen gave Judy a sidelong glare. She didn't dare speak out loud in case Webb was lurking nearby, listening, so she merely pointed at the swat and splat hanging from her utility belt. He nodded in approval. The swat and splat was one of their Uncle Machete's most effective and messy criminal-catching gizmos. Deploying it unleashed a giant fly swatter that squashed the villain flat and kept him still long enough for the Spy Kids to cuff him. Both Carmen and Judy knew it would be the perfect gizmo to take Webb Pitchman down. As they crept stealthily into the food court, Carmen's and Judy's every spy sense was at high alert. Carmen took in the giant fiberglass cheeseburger in the center of the food court and wondered if Webb might be hiding behind it. She lifted her spy watch and pressed the heat sensor button. If there was a warm body behind that burger, her spy watch would tell her. But the scan turned up cold. Meanwhile, Judy eyed the virtual restaurant suspiciously. He didn't see Webb in Walkie Talk, where the Chinese vegetables screamed in protest as they were stir-fried. Nor was the villain lurking in the Yo-Yo Froyo shop, where the sweet frozen yogurt always melted before a frustrated snacker could take a bite. That Webb is a sick man, Judy muttered, shuddering at the snack abuse. Tell you what, Carmen, why don't you search over by the hot dog hoedown, and I'll check out the pickle picker. Carmen? Judy suddenly realized he'd been talking to thin air. His sister had disappeared. Carmen! He cried, spinning around in search of his spy partner. Zzz. Judy followed the zipping sound. There was Carmen, in the grip of a giant mechanical arm. It had plunged out of the kitchen of a nearby cinnamon roll shop. Carmen was writhing and struggling against the mechanical arm's claw, but the giant silver prongs held her tight. Run, Judy! She cried. Don't get caught! Ah! Judy screamed. No sooner had Carmen's warning echoed across the floor, the food court, than he felt the grip of another giant claw around his own middle. Carmen! Judy screeched as the arm lifted him off the ground and whipped him backward. Judy twisted and turned so hard you could feel his red curls flopping against his face, but nothing could pry him loose from the mechanical arm's grip. As the robot yanked Judy away, he saw Carmen's arm dangle her over a counter that was covered with dough. It dropped her right into the middle of the floury mess. Then it grabbed a bowl of melted butter and poured it over her head. After dousing her with cinnamon and sugar, the arm began rolling Carmen up into the dough. She was going to be baked into a giant cinnamon roll. Carmen! Judy cried. No! Judy's screams were gargling when he was dumped into a giant blender filled with juice. His mechanical arm began slicing bananas over Judy's head. Next, it reached for some strawberries. In another minute, Judy thought desperately, I'm going to be a giant smoothie. I've got to get out of this. On the other side of the food court, Carmen was thinking, a giant cinnamon roll? This is what I've been reduced to? I've got to get out of this. Then at the same moment, each spy kid thought, but how? The spy siblings were still pondering their escape when suddenly a glass elevator in the center of the food court opened, and from that gleaming elevator stepped Webb Pitchman. In person, he looked even slicker and more plasticky than he had been on the internet. He stalked to the middle of the food court and gazed at the butter-doused Carmen and the fruit-covered Judy. Then he unleashed a maniacal laugh. Now, why would anyone want to shop at such a dangerous mall? He asked the kids tauntingly. When they can safely click in a whoppershopper.com. Webb reached into the pocket of his shiny suit and pulled out a digital camera. In fact, he added, snapping pictures of each spy kid, I think this will make an excellent page on my website. A cautionary tale, if you will. I don't think you'll be posting that picture, Pitchman. Webb gasped. Judy gasped. Carmen gasped and blushed. The voice belonged to Jake. Silently, he'd been climbing to the top of the giant cheeseburger. Now he was gazing down at Webb, and he was armed with an oversized pixie stick and a bag of jawbreakers. He was ready to attack. Why, hello there, little boy, Webb said, gazing up at Jake. You think you can conquer me with candy? How quaint. How very mall. Dude, Jake said in a low growl. Don't you dare diss them all! With that, Jake lifted a pixie stick to his mouth. Both ends of the stick had been torn open. Judy thought jealously, Mickey ate the the tasty pink sugar inside. Jake shoved a jawbreaker into the paper tube and pumped out his cheeks. Then he blew with all of his might. Thwomp! Ah! Webb cried as the jawbreaker thwacked him right in the forehead. Slapping his hand over his face, he stumbled backward from the pain and the force. That's when Red and Mickey popped out from behind a candied nut cart and began covering the villain with silly string. Webb cried again. This time he stumbled forward, clawing at his face. But he was so wrapped up in silly string he was blinded. Thump! Jake hit Webb with another jawbreaker while Mickey and Red ran to the Spy Kids' rescue. They located the off buttons at the base of each robotic arm. Instantly, the giant claws slackened, and Carmen and Judy were able to crawl out of their clutches. Carmen self-consciously smoothed her greasy, cinnamon-dusted hair back. Then she looked at the mall rats and said, "How can we thank you?" "By finding the computer hub and de-virtualizing the mall," Jake yelled. Wait, that was Jake, not Mickey. What am I talking about? Hey, Malia, how you doing tonight? Sorry if I missed seeing you when you were here, but I hope you're doing well. "By finding the computer hub and de-virtualizing the mall," Jake yelled from atop the cheeseburger. Then he turned to pelt Webb with yet another jawbreaker. "Hurry!" Red said to Carmen and Judy. She pulled 3 more cans of silly string out of her pockets. "We stopped at Pincher's Gifts and Sweet Sweeties candy store on the way over here. We got plenty of ammo to hold this baddie off while you go find the computer." "Not to mention your mom and dad," Mickey said, shooting the Spy Kids a sympathetic glance between silly string squirts. "Good plan," Judy said with a curt nod. "We promise," Carmen. What? Why do I keep wanting to say Cartman when I'm saying Carmen? That's like the 5th total time, the first time tonight, but like at least the 5th time in total I'll be reading this book that I've said Cartman over Carmen. And every time I look at that, every time I think of Cartman, I'm looking at this South Park hat that I have over here that I know has Cartman on it. And seriously, I need to stop doing that. Anyway, we promise, Cartman. I did it again. God damn it. Forrest, it is not Cartman. It is Carmen. Get it right, brother. I'm not mad. I'm genuinely not mad. I'm just having a lot of fun at my own expense of the fact that I keep saying Cartman over Carmen. Remember, Forrest, it is Carmen, not Cartman. "We promise," Carmen added. "We won't let you down." "Later, skater," Jake yelled, waving at Carmen with a cockeyed grin. "Good luck." With that, the Spy Kids made a run for it. Chapter 13. Actually, let me make sure no other comments are added outside of that. Okay. Chapter 13. The funny part is we're nearly an hour into this, and we're already 2 chapters away from the final chapter. The 13, 14, and 15. 13, 14, 15, 16. So after chapter 13, we got 3 more chapters left. Chapter 13. Carmen and Judy sprinted toward the virtual mall. "We have to find that computer hub," Carmen yelled. Carmen huffed. "If we find the hub, we'll find Mom and Dad. I'm sure of it." As she spoke, she leaped out of the way of a carousel horse that had jumped off the Mary Too Loud. It was galloping through the mall, whinnying shrilly. The horse almost knocked her over, but Carmen recovered her balance and kept running. As Judy hopped behind Carmen, He was nearly splattered by a snow tornado, which was sort of like a giant snow cone that come to life. But he kept running. The Spy Kids ran past garishly lit stores that sold nothing but strangely colored goggles. There were popcorn stands with nothing but burnt kernels, waterless water fountains, toyless toy stores, and recordless record stores. And they kept running. But when they'd gone for about a mile, Judy slowed to a stop. He looked around. Every store in the area seemed to be selling blobby, brightly glowing lava lamps. Twangly psychedelic music throbbed through the air, making Judy's head pound and his shoulders sag. He kicked at a bright orange floor tile in frustration. Carmen jogged to a halt, turned around, and stared at him with her hands on her hips. "What are you waiting for?" she sputtered. "We've got to keep looking." "For what?" Judy said. "How are we even going to recognize the hub if we find it? We might have run right by it. I mean, look at all this glowy stuff." He gestured wildly at the sea of lava lamps. "Any of these things could be an entrance to the hub. Maybe Webb has one." "Don't say that," Carmen said. "Have you forgotten he has Mom and Dad?" This just made Judy's head hang lower. "No, Judy," Carmen said, stomping her foot in frustration. "You can't give up. We have to. Hey, what's going on?" The moment Carmen had stamped her foot on one of the orange floor tiles, the lava lamps had all disappeared. So had the crazy music. And the flashing lights. It was all replaced by a serene garden scene. Where there had been lava lamps, there was now a sparkling pond filled with lily pads and shiny glass orbs. Butterflies spitted from flower to flower. Sweet flute music and sunshiny perfume filled the air. The nearby stores were filled with wind chimes, fragrant oils, and yoga videos. Yellow price tags fluttered from the wares like flower petals. It was peace and quiet for sale. "How cynical," Carmen scoffed. "How weird," Judy pointed out. "The entire setting just changed." "Well, duh," Carmen said sullenly. "We're in a virtual environment. Things could change any time." "Yeah," Judy said slowly. "But that change would have to come from the computer hub. And we know Webb isn't in the computer hub. He's being beamed by a silly screen in the food court. So maybe your stomp jostled a mouse or something. But for that to be possible, the computer hub would have to be right under our feet." "Judy," Carmen said, her brown eyes widening, "I hate to say this, but that's brilliant." She spun around, looking wildly for some sort of stairwell or doorway. "There's one!" she cried, running to a gray door tucked between two storefronts. A red exit sign glowed above the door. Carmen grabbed the knob and pulled. And then she yanked. Nothing happened. She pulled a lock-picking tool out from her utility belt and fiddled with the knob for 5 whole minutes. Finally, she almost screamed with exasperation. "I'm not sure if this is even a real door," she cried. "It's impossible to open." When she looked to Judy for a response, she realized he'd been ignoring her. In fact, he seemed transfixed on one of the glass swords floating in the peaceful lily pond. "Hello?" Carmen blurted. "Come on, Judy, don't go all zen on me now. We've got big trouble. We're locked out of the hub." "Maybe," Judy said slowly. He was scratching his head in thought. "Or maybe not," he finished philosophically. He stood up and fished around in one of his cargo pants pockets. He pulled out his pocket-sized computer and used his wireless modem to log on to the web. "What are you doing?" Carmen asked. She walked up behind Judy and peeked over his shoulder. "WhopperShopper.com? What, are we buying from the enemy now?" "Please," Judy said as he pointed and clicked his way around the website. "I'm not going to buy anything. I just have a hunch." Suddenly, as Judy clicked on a page within the Whopper Shopper website, the computer started spewing music. It was the same twangly psychedelic music the Spy Kids had just heard a few minutes ago, and on the screen were flashing lights and lava lamps. Breathlessly, Judy pointed and clicked again. Now the peaceful flute music was playing on the site, and the screen was fluttering with butterflies and lily ponds. I thought this all looked familiar, Judy said. The virtual environment is directly linked to the WhopperShopper.com. The website was Webb's blueprint. You're right, Carmen said, but then she frowned. How does that help us? If we're somehow standing in the website, Judy said, his eyes lighting up, then there must be a way to log off. We just have to find it. The Spy Kids began looking at the touchy-feely stores with a fresh eye. Suddenly, Judy pointed at a sign above one of the stores. Look over at that store, he cried. It's called Alternative Solutions, to help you delete the shifting problems of life. Carmen snapped her fingers. Then she glanced at the exit door, the one that had defied even her best lock-picking tools. She gasped. Check it out, she told her brother. The sign over that door doesn't say exit at all. It says escape. And there it is, Judy crowed. Alt, Shift, Delete. The 3 buttons on the computer keyboard that will get you out of any website. Carmen gave her brother an intense look. Ready? She asked him. Ready! Judy ran to stand beneath the alternative solutions doorway. Carmen dashed to the escape door. It still looked solid and impenetrable. She gulped. If this didn't work, she was going to have quite a lump on her head. 1, Judy called out from his perch. 2, Carmen replied. Finally, both the Spy Kids took deep breaths and said, 3! Then they jumped. Judy hopped into the store, but he didn't land on the floor. Instead, he found himself fall through a substance that felt sort of like wet cotton balls. Meanwhile, Carmen plunged right through the door. It felt like sticky sawdust. Then she found herself plummeting down a slick slide. Ah! Oof! Judy grunted as the cotton balls finally gave way. He landed on a hard surface with a groan. Ah! Oh! Carmen cried as she flew out of the slide and skidded to a halt on a hard surface. She shook her head and looked around. To her left, Judy was sitting on the floor. In front of her was the humming mainframe that the kids had seen on Webb's computer monitors. Its lights were flashing, its bells were ringing, and its whistles were whistling. And huddled to the kids' right, with gags of cheap silk whopper-shopper scarves around their mouths and tacky plastic ropes around their ankles and wrists, were Mom and Dad. Yes, Judy said, pumping his fist in the air. The Spy Kids clambered to their feet and ran to their parents. The 4 Cortezes were together again. Almost 1 o'clock. Chapter 14. Carmen yanked off her parents' gags. Oh, kids, Mom cried, giving the chunk spy a kiss. We were so worried. That Webb is a greedy villain. And he's a terrible poet, Dad sniffed. Did you get a load of those rhymes? Phew. That might be the butter in my hair that you're smelling, Carmen said with a grimace. I was this close to becoming a giant sweet roll with a Judy smoothie on the side. What? The aghast parents said together. I'll let Judy explain while he unties you, Carmen said briskly. She leaped to her feet and raced across the room to the mainframe. But right now I've got a job to do. Defiantly, Carmen plucked her cinnamon-smeared self into Webb's chair and began typing away on the computer's central keyboard. Deftly, she began to chip away at the security blocks Webb had installed in his computer program. But breaking into the virtual environment wasn't going to be as easy as just decoding some password. Webb had littered the program with hacker sand traps. Questions that had to be answered correctly. One gaffe and the system would shut her out entirely. Nervously, Carmen made her way through the first few questions. They were easy, though. What's the capital of Zimbabwe? Name all 36 Inuit words for snow. If a train left Omaha at 45 miles per hour and another train left Providence at 65 miles per hour, what meal would the dining cars be serving when the trains crossed paths? Cinchi, Carmen said, typing her answers into the computer. She'd hacked several levels into the program when a more challenging formula popped up on the screen. If X is to Z and C is to A, and D is inversely proportionate to H, but directly opposite of K, then what number would logically correspond to G? Carmen gaped at the equation and gnawed on her lower lip. If someone ever comes up with a good reason for algebra, I want to know it, she muttered. Then she turned and glanced at her family, who were pacing nervously in front of the hub door. I need a little help from the big guns, Carmen announced. Mom! Mom rushed over to read the problem. Then the Cortez women started computing. As they did, Judy's spy watch buzzed. Hello? Judy said into the watch's speaker. Dude! It was Jake, and he was gasping for breath. Hey, Judy, Jake huffed. I've got you on my speakerphone. We're all okay, but Webb's headed your way, man. We held him off as long as we could. I went through all my jawbreakers, but he didn't give up. Then he finally unraveled himself from the silly string and made a break for it. Tell him about the pizza! Mickey's proud voice piped up in the background. Pizza? Judy asked with interest. Yeah, Mickey replied. When Webb started running, I tossed some super greasy pizza slices in front of him. He slid for a good 10 feet. It was sweet. Yeah, Red's voice pipped up. That Chinese suit of his was ruined. He was super annoyed. Great, Dad muttered. Now that we've got a mad villain on our hands. How are you doing, Carmen? Got it, Carmen announced as she and Mom scribbled the last number of their equation on a piece of paper. 4! Of course, it's so obvious. Triumphantly, Carmen typed in the answer. Correct, an electronic voice in the computer announced. You are now entering the final description level before full entry. We're almost in, Carmen called out. Cool, Jade's voice said through Judy's spy watch. Carmen couldn't help but grin. But as Webb's last question appeared on the screen, her smile faded quickly. In fact, her face fell. Oh, this is too much, she complained. Listen to this. If a distressed pair of dirt-washed GK jeans is marked down $15, then put on the 25% off sale rack, and they have a slight tear in the cuff, how much will the jeans cost? I don't even know how to begin to solve this one. Judy and Dad's faces were utterly blank. Even shopping-savvy Mom was flummoxed. Carmen's shoulders slumped. To have come all this way and be blocked by the final pass. It was maddening. Piece of red velvet cake, said a voice in Judy's spy watch. It was red. Okay, the last GK jeans? $65, Red declared. But what most people don't know is that the dirt-washed, distressed GKs were introduced in the third quarter of last year's fall fashion lineup, which means as of 3 days ago they are totally out of style. so they're already worth only $58. Subtract $15 and you've got $43. 25% off, that is $32.25. And as any savvy shopper knows, a slight tear is about a quarter-inch long, and any tear of an inch or less means $7.50 off. That's totally standard practice. The slack-jawed spies just nodded at Judy's spy watch and awe. If the Olympics ever launched a shopping competition, Red was a shoo-in for the American team. She was a total pro. She rattled off the rest of her calculation without a moment's hesitation. In 32.25 minus 750 is 24.75, she said. I'd buy him. That's a pretty good deal, even for last season's jeans. Wow, Judy breathed. Impressive. Carmen typed the figure into the computer and held her breath. The computer's bell started ringing wildly. The whistles blew an alarm. The mainframe shimmied and shook. Then the lights dimmed and the computer's loud whirring died down to a feeble hum. The Cortezes gave one another apprehensive looks. What just happened? Judy asked quaveringly. Jake answered through the cell phone. Dudes, he cried. You did it! The food court's totally back to normal. The froyo is frozen again. The cinnamon rolls have shrunk back down to the size of softballs. The dragon's returned to his video game, and the escalators are no longer endless. Judy ran to the computer hub door and threw it open. He found himself blinking in surprise at the central atrium of the mall. In the amusement park off to the left, the roller coaster and the tilt-a-whirl were already starting to make their way around their tracks. To the right, the Merry Too Loud had once again become a merry-go-round, spinning slowly to the tinkling of pretty organ music. Shoppers were emerging from stores that once again sold ordinary items like candles, clothes, and pots and pans. They looked bleary-eyed and bedraggled, but intact. This end of the mall is A-OK too, Judy announced to Jake. Now all we've got to do is deal with Webb. Right, Mom said. He'll probably be here any second. We don't have time to come up with a plan, but maybe we don't need one. After all, there are 4 of us and only 1 of him. She held her fists up in front of her face. I think we'll do just fine, she added grimly. The Cortezes lined up in front of the computer hub door, then feet planted in kung fu fighting stances and their dukes raised. They waited for the villain to return to the scene of the crime. A minute passed. No Webb. Another few minutes went by. Out in the atrium, several shoppers started to gather their wits and trail out of the Mall of the Universe. But a few stayed behind and resumed their shopping. In fact, it took almost no time for the mall's summer busy consumerism to resume. But there was still no Webb. Surely Webb has got to be desperate to get back to the hub, Mom said in confusion. With shoppers back in the mall, WhopperShopper.com must be losing profits with each passing minute. He'll be here, Dad agreed with a nod. But after another 5 minutes had passed by, Mom lowered her fist to her sides. Webb must know we're lying in wait for him, she said. He's hiding, which means we've got to go find him ourselves. I guess that means, Judy said wearily, it's time to hit the mall. Again. Chapter 15, in the penultimate chapter of the book. As Judy rolled up his sleeves and prepared to head back into the Mall of the Universe, Carmen bit her lip. I think you're right, she said to her mom and brother. But I also know computer geeks. There's only so long they can resist the lure of a warm keyboard and a glowing monitor screen. Webb will come back here. I'm sure of that. So I'm thinking we split up again, Mom said. Good idea. You and Judy have been all over the mall. You know it better than we do. So Dad and I will stay here and guard the hub. You go look for Webb. Perfect plan, Carmen declared. Immediately, she and Judy plunged out into the mall. Judy gaped as he passed the family placidly licking ice cream cones. Others were coming out of a sporting goods store with fresh shopping bags. How quickly How quickly they forgot that about half an hour ago, the Mall of the Universe was like Dante's Inferno, Judy sputtered. They're already back to shopping till they're dropping. Look over there, Carmen said. She pointed to her left. The Swiss Army knife store is really cleaning up, Carmen noted. Droves of shoppers were snapping up scissors to snip off their now useless MOTU bracelets. Consumers, Judy scoffed. I just don't get it. Hey! He stopped in his tracks and gazed with wide eyes at a store to his right. Check out that place, he said. He stopped to read the sign dreamily. View and Chew, a source for all your video watching and snacking needs. Ooh. Excuse me, Carmen said, rolling her eyes. How quickly you forget the only thing we're shopping for right now is one slick and sleazy supervillain. Right, Judy said. He sheepishly averted his eyes from the View and Chew store. Mission first. Mission accomplished! At the sound of a gleeful, scratchy voice, Carmen and Judy spun around. It was Red, with Jake and Mickey in tow. The mall rats were running toward them. Red and Mickey had silly string remnants trailing from their shirt sleeves, and Jake's mouth was bright pink from his pixie stick blowgun. But other than that, the mall rats looked like they'd survived their battle without a scratch. When the Spy Kids and the mall rats met in the middle of their atrium, they whooped and slapped each other with high fives. You got us our mall back, Jake said. You rock! Aww, Carmen said, going beet red and glancing shyly at her toes. She was suddenly rendered speechless. Whatever, Judy said, rolling his eyes at his smitten sister. What Carmen is apparently too tongue-tied to tell you is, actually our mission is only half over. We've devirtualized them all, but Webb Pitchman is still at large. We haven't fulfilled our duties until we've taken him into custody. Whoa, Jake said seriously. Yeah, Carmen said, recovering her voice. This could get sort of hairy. You guys should probably head home to safety. I guess, Jake said, looking at Carmen with a flicker of worry in his blue eyes. Don't worry, Carmen said softly. We're highly trained for this sort of thing. We take down villains all the time. Well, Jake said, turning a bit pink in the cheeks himself. Maybe I can call you later. To make sure everything went okay? Now Carmen was blushing so hard she was sure she was purple. She nodded and said weakly, yeah, call me, that'd be good. Whoa, Red said, staring at the scene with surprise. Jake with a crush. Now that's a new one. Jake blushed harder. Then, eager for a diversion, he pointed at a store nearby. It was one of those crowded shops that sold everything from kitchen gadgets to picture frames to stepladders. A worker had just hung a banner in the entrance that read, going out of the mall business. Everything must go. 50% off all day. Hey, look, Red, Jake said. A sale. You can't resist a sale. The ploy worked. Red forgot all about teasing Jake and Carmen. She merely gave them a happy wave goodbye and headed toward the store, which was already teeming with customers. Judy stared at the shopping extravaganza and shook his head in disgust. Then he motioned to his sister. Well, let's keep searching, he said. He started to resume his jog through the mall, but Carmen stayed put. She was staring intently at the going out of business sale. Judy doubled back at her. What is it? He asked, following her gaze. Then he gasped. A man was frantically drawing on another banner with a fat marker. The sign said, 50% off? Don't make us scoff. Just glad to be alive. We're talking 75. Judy drew in his breath. That rhyme is really bad, he said. Bad in a familiar way. And look at that guy, Carmen said, nodding at the sign maker. He had a paunchy, jiggly gut and a wad made of frizzy brown curls. Webb? Judy said. Back in the skies, Carmen said, narrowing her eyes and nodding. So we're back in business, Judy declared. He started to run. Carmen was right behind him. In 10 seconds, Judy had traversed the corridor. The supervillain was in his sights. Under his breath. Just Judy counted. 1, 2, 3! Then he jumped. He landed squarely on Webb's back. Ah! The supervillain cried in surprise. Who is that? Get him off me! Webb began spinning in wild circles, but Judy held on to his head tightly. I'll get off of you, he said through gritted teeth. But I'm taking your wig with me! Judy dug his fingers into the villain's curls and yanked back hard, but the wig didn't budge. In fact, it felt an awful lot like real hair. Ow! The man screeched. What are you doing, kid? In surprise, Judy slid to the floor. The man spun around and faced Judy with a bewildered expression. An expression that definitely did not belong to Webb D.C. Pitchman. Whoops. No, Judy said nervously. So sorry about that, sir. Caused a mistaken identity. First of all goes crazy, now the customers, the man sputtered. He grabbed his marker and swiped an angry line through the 75% off on his sign. Then he wrote, 100% off it all. I want out of this mall. Uh-oh. This is... Yeah, there we go. Just in the nick of time. Just in the nick of time with that. Cringing, Judy backed away from the angry store owner. He was about to exit the store entirely when a voice stopped him cold. It was coming from behind the cash register. It belonged to a man in a long black ponytail and a twitchy handlebar mustache. As the man scooped armfuls of money into his cash register, he addressed the throng of sales-happy shoppers. Hit the sale before you bail. This might be your last chance. Do the MOTU dance. Carmen and Judy gaped at each other. Wham! They cried at the same time. Then together they began running toward the cash register. You go for his hands, Carmen hugged her brother. I'll aim for the feet. Together we'll grab him. But Webb saw them coming, and he was ready. He planted his feet and hit them with his familiar WhopperShopper.com sales pitch. Something that slices and dices, he snarled. The duds that are nicest, curse for your vices. Or how about some mices? As he said that last line, Webb pulled something out from beneath the counter. It was a handful of computer mice. But these were no ordinary point-and-clickers. They were robotic mice with lots of teeth. Sharp ones. Cackling, Webb tossed the mean little robots at the Spy Kids. The mice began snapping at their shirt sleeves and hair. Carmen and Judy skidded to a halt and threw up their arms to protect themselves. While they were distracted, Webb reached for a big red button on his cash register. He pushed it. Swoosh! Swoosh! Suddenly, a shimmery, almost invisible tube erupted from the middle of the shop's floor. It looked just like the snapping snouts that Carmen and Judy had fought off when they first arrived at the mall. It was seemed to be to a virtual environment. The tube undulated threateningly, snapping at any shoppers who lurked nearby. Webb ran for it. Desperately, the spy kid shook off the last of the snapping mice and chased after him. The supervillain leaped at the tube. In fact, he jumped right inside it. The seam swallowed him up like a piece of candy. Then it began to turn shimmery and wavy. Webb must have put a sudden death failsafe for the virtual environment program, Carmen cried as the kids ran toward the tubes. Now that he's accessed it, the tube's going to disappear. Not before we take it for a little ride, Judy yelled with determination. He leaped at the tube. It swallowed him up. So Carmen took a gulp and jumped too. She made it inside the tube just before it evaporated in a shimmer of fluttery dots. The chase was on. Chapter 16, and the final chapter of the book. Ah! The spy kids cried. From the moment they had leaped into the virtual reality seam, they had been tumbling down a slick, slimy tunnel. The tunnel twisted and turned and even did a loop-de-loop. Ah! Judy cried, clutching his stomach. I'm getting tunnel sick. Hang in there. Hang in there, Carmen yelled as she slid along behind him. It's gotta end soon. And when it does, we have to have the strength to face Webb. No sooner had the words left Carmen's mouth than Judy flew out of the tunnel with one final queasy yell. He landed in a pile of something soft and papery. A moment later, Carmen landed next to him. When the spy kids shook the stars from their eyes, they looked down. There, then they gasped. They had landed in a pile of money. In fact, a heap of cash covered the entire floor of a cavernous room. On the walls were shelves filled with skateboards, board shorts, stickers, baseball caps, messenger bags, and any other gear a trendy kid could possibly want. To Judy, the room looked very familiar. I know this place, he declared. Or should I say, this webpage. We're in another site on WhopperShopper.com. The skater kid page? Carmen said, eyeing the wares with an arched eyebrow. Yeah, Judy said. On one wall was a bank of computer monitors, much like the one the spy kids had found in the Amazonian-themed restaurant. But this time, each screen was different. One displayed Zen garden with the glass orbs and flowers. Another was filled with lava lamps. Yet another was the very room of skater duds in which the spy kids were standing. Every time one of the pages racked up a sale, it emitted a loud cha-ching. Then a wad of dollars spat out of the slot beneath the computers. The room was slowly being filled with cash, but at the same time it was being emptied out by Webb D.C. Pitchman. Still wearing his ugly black wig and mustache, the mad villain was standing on the other side of the huge room. He was scooping money off the floor and stuffing it into his shopping bags. Let's get him, Judy said to his sister. Webb glanced up and sneered. I don't think so, kiddies, he blurted. Shoving one last handful of money into his bag, Webb raced for a circular doorway into the room's far end. It looked like the mouth of another tunnel. Parked in front of it was a single engine-powered motor scooter. Clearly, Webb had set the stage for a quick getaway. As Carmen began to run after him, Webb hopped onto the scooter and fired up its engine. No! Carmen cried. She began to sprint, but Judy just leaned against the wall and just watched Webb go. What are you doing? Carmen screeched over her shoulder. We've got to get him! Why bother? Judy said with a shrug. He's not going anywhere. Huh? Carmen blurted. At that moment she heard a sputter and a cough over by the tunnel. It was the motor scooter. Before it had made it 10 feet, its motor had conked out. Blast! Webb cried. He turned over the engine again. It barely caught, then died with another cough. No! Webb screamed. He started to run. And that's when Judy joined Carmen in chasing the villain down. They caught up to him easily. No! The villain shrieked again. He dropped his money bags and put up his dukes. But Webb was a webhead through and through, and he hadn't been to a gym in a long time. With only a few expert kung fu moves, the Spy Kids were able to overpower him and cuff his hands behind his back. As Carmen jumped for joy, Judy called his parents to tell them about Webb's capture. Good job, Juanito, Dad's voice said through Judy's spy watch. I can see your location with my own spy locator. Just go to the end of the tunnel and you'll be in the parking lot. We'll meet you there. With an OSS call that will take Webb Pitchman into custody. No! Webb cried once more. He seemed to be searching for a witty retort, but clearly he was all rhymed out. So he merely hung his bewigged head in silence as Carmen and Judy grabbed his elbows to lead him down the tunnel. How did you know Webb wouldn't make it? Carmen asked her brother as they made their way through the tunnel. Well, unlike Webb here, Judy said, I've read the complaints and returns page of WhopperShopper.com. Those expensive scooters are the most notorious of Webb's shoddy products. Every one of them makes it about 5 feet before petering out. As Carmen giggled at Webb's misfortune, they reached the end of the tunnel, and as promised, their proud parents were waiting for them. So was an OSS car. A couple of agents quickly grabbed Webb and put him under arrest. Carmen and Judy ran to give their parents a triumphant hug, but they could barely get near their mother. She was loaded down with shopping bags. Go a little mall crazy, did you? Carmen asked her mom. Mom's green eyes crinkled up sheepishly. Well, you did need those new school clothes, she told the kids. And there were all these great sales. Once I knew you'd saved the day, I just couldn't resist. Dad and Judy grinned at each other and rolled their eyes. Women and malls, Dad said. It's a love affair that will never die. Mark my words, my boy. Actually, Dad, Carmen said, glancing up as she loomed at the looming mall of the universe with a curled lip. I think our little mission may have cured me of my mall fever. At least until the spring fashion line is released. At this point, the only thing I want to consume is a nice, simple, home-cooked dinner. Cool, Judy said in a perfect imitation of Jake's Gator Kid voice. I'm starving. Let's blow this mall and head for home. I've officially shopped till I dropped. And that is the end of Mall of the Universe. I told you it was going to be the second half. I said it was a short book, and I meant it. Just 2 parts of it. Chapter 1 through 8 for part 1, and chapter 9 through 16 for part 2. And that's it. That was a very quick read. I will say, this is very much a 2000s book. because there's so much lingo in this book that makes you instantly think of the 2000s era compared to modern day times with this book. I mean, it came out in 2003. What did you expect? Right? What did I expect, right? So, yeah. It's not bad of a book. It's not the worst book I've ever read. But it's not really a book I would write home about, you know. But hey, it fit the back to school type of stuff going on right now with kids either already back to school or gonna be going back to school within the coming days, right? Within the coming days, right? So, yeah. So, not the kind of book I would write home about, but if you like Spy Kids, you might like this book. As well as probably all the other books from this book series that I do not have. This is actually the only Spy Kids Adventures book I currently have in my possession, compared to the few number of other books in the series that I have. From Star Trek, Next Generation, I got one book of Voyager, another book that's kind of like a special based off of, that takes place after the movie Star Trek Generations. I've got a few Goosebumps books in this line of books back here behind me. Yeah, I got so many good books for us to read for anybody that's a fan of those things as well at that point, as well as a number of books made by the same author, Stephen King, that I know a good number of people would be fans of me reading. But yeah, so as far as this book goes, I would probably give it a PG, like a low tier PG rating, because it's kind of got like, you know, a bit of action in there. Not, it's kind of like what you'd expect to be like a Spy Kids. I would basically say, whatever the original Spy Kids book, the Spy Kids movies, I have to see what they were rated and what they were rated PG for. I'd have to see why they were rated PG, what they were rated PG for. But generally, whatever was in those movies, this would be rated PG-4 as well. Because it fits it, right? So anyway, yeah. So now that we got this book done, we now have just this book to do. But I think I'll give it a little break for people. Tomorrow night, I don't know, but maybe. Tomorrow night, if I get home early enough, I will be going live with a very interesting thing going on here. And I hate when this damn TV soundbar above that TV goes off. Yeah, let me show you guys something. Hold on a second. Let me pick up this stuff here so you guys can see what I'm about to show you. So you see this, right? Oh. I thought it was close. Okay. You guys see this, right? If you guys remember, I was playing this game some time ago. And I announced I was going to do something with it after finishing off Minigame Island. Now that thing is very simple. That was very simple. So, tomorrow night... Wait a minute. Okay. So tomorrow night I'll be going live with what I like to affectionately call Mario Party 1 New Game Plus. Where instead of how I was just using the simple the dice block, this time we're going back to the boards, but we're using every single one of these dice blocks. And we're gonna try to see if I can do the same thing like I did last time, like if I could do the same thing of getting first in all the boards in a 50 turn games. So be there for it tomorrow night. I'll be going live with the first episode of Mario New Game Plus, as like I said, I affectionately call it, starting with Mario's Rainbow Castle. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of. So with that said, turn around the camera. So with that said, if you guys want to see that, don't forget, if you guys want to see that, or if you enjoyed my reading of the Spy Kids adventure book, hit the like and subscribe if you want to see that Mario Party thing that I got going on tomorrow night. With that said, guys, so thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and until tomorrow night, maybe, with Mario Party 1 and what I like to personally call New Game Plus in my own way, this is Forrest Walpole signing off.